I was just thinking about the whole idea of the Great American Road Trip. It's almost a cinematic thing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's deeply embedded in the culture.
You picture the convertible, top down, maybe some classic rock on the radio, a cooler full of sodas in the back, and just that endless ribbon of asphalt stretching out. It's the ultimate promise of freedom. You just go.
It is a very, very romantic image. But as anyone who has actually done a long drive knows, the movie version leaves out quite a bit.
Oh, for sure. The movie montage never shows that part 4 hours in where your back is killing you, you're miles from a bathroom, and the GPS is just spinning because you lost the signal.
Right. And that freedom suddenly starts to feel a lot more like stress.
Exactly. That's when the adventure turns into, I don't know, an endurance test.
And that shift is precisely why I was so fascinated by the source material we're digging into today.
Yes. So we're looking at a guide titled Essential Trip Planning Tips for Safer Driving. And I have to be honest, when I first saw that title, my eyes kind of glazed over a bit.
It sounds a little dry.
A little, yeah. I thought, okay, check the tires, bring a map, don't speed. Got it. It sounded like a DMV pamphlet. But once you actually get into it, you realize it's not a checklist. It's more of a strategy guide.
That's a great way to put it. The source really challenges the whole assumption that just knowing how to drive is enough.
It's about upgrading your driving IQ.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about avoiding accidents, though that's obviously a huge part of it. It's about mastering the entire environment.
And the goal here, I think it's important to say, is empowerment. We're not trying to make you paranoid about leaving your driveway.
Right.
It's about giving you the tools so that when something does happen, a blowout, bad weather, a weird situation at a rest stop, you have a plan. You've connected the dots between being prepared and just having peace of mind.
So let's start with that big picture philosophy. The source suggests we stop thinking of a trip as just one long event called driving.
This is a really crucial concept. Our brain just thinks, I am driving to grandma's house, one big block. But the source breaks it down into these tiny, granular phases. It lists things like pre-drive, opening, closing, pre-start, startup, driving, parking, shutting down. And this one really got me, climbing out.
Climbing out. That sounds like something an astronaut does.
Yeah.
Why treat getting out of the car as its own phase?
Because transitions are where we're vulnerable. Think about it. You've just driven for 3 hours. You're tired. You're stiff. You pull into a parking spot. You turn off the engine, and your brain just clocks out.
The task is done.
The task is done. So you throw the door open without checking the mirror.
Oh, I've done that.
Or you forget to lock the car because you're rushing to the restroom. By labeling it climbing out, it forces you to treat it like a deliberate action. Check your surroundings, secure your gear, then you exit. It keeps you alert through the entire process.
The source also mentions something called real-life videos. What's that about?
Yeah, this is a really smart idea. It's about bridging that gap between theory and practice.
Yeah.
You can read, maintain a safe following distance, and nod along. But seeing what that actually looks like on a rainy highway at night with glare from headlights, that's totally different. It builds a mental model so you aren't figuring it out for the first time in a crisis.
It's like visualizing the game before you play it.
Exactly that.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy, break it down, stay alert. Now let's get into the hardware, the car itself. My approach is usually, kick the tires and pray.
Which is a massive, massive gamble. The source is very specific here. It starts with fluids. Oil, coolant, brake fluid. But the one it highlights, which so many of us neglect, is windshield washer fluid.
I am so guilty of this. I never think about it until I'm behind a truck on a slushy road. My windshield is just a sheet of brown mud, and I hit the button, nothing.
And just like that, you're driving blind at 70 miles an hour. It goes from a tiny annoyance to a huge hazard in a split second.
That's a really good point.
And then, of course, tires pressure and tread depth and all your electronics. Are the lights working? Are the wipers streaking?
The basics. But let's move to the part of the source that made me feel the most unprepared. The emergency kit, or the what-if kit.
Insufficient is probably a polite way to describe what most people have. A few empty water bottles and a phone charger isn't a kit.
Yeah.
The source says you need the mechanical stuff. Jumper cables, tools, a spare tire. But here's the real question. Do you actually know how to use the tire changing kit in your car?
That's the catch, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know where the jack is, I think. But have I ever actually used it?
Nope. And you really don't want your first time to be in the pouring rain on the side of the highway. But beyond the tools, it lists safety items. A flashlight, And it specifies with extra
Because
batteries.
a dead flashlight is just a stick.
It's useless. Then you've got first aid supplies, blankets, bottled water, non-perishable snacks.
It sounds a little bit like prepping for the apocalypse, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do I really need all that for a weekend
Well,
trip?
think of it this way. If you break down and you have all that, it's an inconvenience. You're annoyed, but you're safe. You're basically camping. If you don't have those things, and you're waiting 3 hours for a tow truck in freezing temperatures, it can become a medical emergency. You aren't packing for fear, you're packing options.
Backing options.
Yeah.
I like that. So, speaking of options, navigation. I am completely reliant on my GPS. I honestly don't know how anyone got anywhere before smartphones.
Right.
But the source throws a curveball. It says, sure, use your GPS, but keep a physical map.
A paper map.
In 2026, it just feels so archaic.
It does until your phone overheats and dies, or you're in a dead zone. Technology needs two things, power and a signal. A paper map needs neither. It's the ultimate backup.
The backup generator for your brain. Okay, fair point. I'll buy a map. So we've prepped the car. Now we have to talk about the most unpredictable part of the system, the driver.
The human element. And this is so often the weakest link. You can have a perfect car, but if the driver is exhausted, none of that matters.
The source gives some really hard numbers on this, which I found helpful. I usually just drive until I can't feel my legs anymore. I push through.
And that's exactly what it's trying to correct. That pushing through is so dangerous. The source gives a specific rule. Stop every 2 hours or every 100 miles.
Every 2 hours. That feels so frequent. If I'm making good time, the last thing I want to do is stop.
I know, it feels like it breaks your momentum, but you need to stretch, get the blood flowing. But more than that, you need to mentally reset. Highway hypnosis is a real thing.
Your brain just goes into screensaver mode.
Exactly. Getting out, breathing some fresh air, it breaks that trance.
And what's the daily limit?
Avoid driving more than 8 to 10 hours a day. The risk of fatigue-related mistakes just skyrockets after that.
So those marathon 20-hour drives are out.
If safety is your priority, yeah, it's just like driving intoxicated. Your reaction time, your judgment, it all goes. And it mentions the sleep rule, too. Don't drive during the hours you'd normally be sleeping. You're fighting your own biology.
Speaking of biology, let's talk food. The source had some tips here that I found a little rude, because I consider a roadside burger and fries a basic human right on a road trip.
Huh. We all do. But for the driver, it's a tactical mistake. Think about after a big Thanksgiving dinner, you just want a nap.
The food coma.
That's it. Your body is diverting all its energy to digestion. The source recommends light snacks, almonds, fruit, protein bars, and lots of water. Hydration keeps you alert.
Fine, almonds it is. But I am still getting a milkshake when I arrive.
Deal. And for comfort, the source says to adjust your seat and mirrors before you leave, and use cruise control on the highway. It reduces the physical strain, which cuts down on fatigue.
And what about for your mind? Boredom is a real problem.
Absolutely. Pack entertainment audiobooks, podcasts, playlists. But the key tip is to use offline apps. Download everything beforehand so you're not fiddling with your phone trying to get a signal.
That's smart. Preload everything. Okay, I want to shift to what I think is maybe the most valuable part of this source. There's a whole section on safety tips for women driving alone.
Yes. And I just want to say, while it's framed that way, these are really high-level security protocols for anyone. This is about defensive living, not just defensive driving.
It starts before you even leave, with pre-departure security.
Right. Share your itinerary. The source mentions apps like Life 360, so trusted people can see your location in real time. It's a digital lifeline.
And what about physical security?
Avoid being predictable. Vary your routes if you can. And secure your valuables, your purse, your phone, before you get in the car. Don't sit there in a parked car with your head down, displaying everything you own.
I do that all the time.
We all do. But it makes you a target. Put the bag on the floor or in the back before you even unlock the door.
Okay, so on the road, the source talks about creating a fortress.
It's a mindset. Doors locked, windows up. It's a simple physical barrier. And along with that is the idea of the buffer.
Like stoplights.
Yes. Leave enough room between you and the car in front so you have an escape route. If someone approaches your car, you're not trapped. You have an out.
Leave yourself an out. I like that. Now, the source also has a very strict no list.
A very strict one. Never pick up hitchhikers. Obvious? Maybe, but people still do it. And don't stop in isolated areas. Push through to a well-lit gas station or rest stop with people around.
Okay, this next part is so important it actually gave me chills. The minor accident protocol.
This is probably the single most valuable piece of advice in the whole document. So the scenario is you're in a dark, maybe unsafe area at night, and someone bumps you from behind.
My first instinct is to get out, check the damage, do the whole insurance
And
dance.
the source says, no, stop, do not get out of the car. That bump could be a trick, a bump and rob, a way to get you out of your locked, safe vehicle.
So what do? You can't just drive away. That's a hit and run.
You manage it. You signal to the other driver to follow you. Put your hazard lights on, drive slowly, and lead them to a well-lit, populated area, a gas station, a police station. If they're legit, they'll follow. If they have bad intentions, they're not going to follow you into a crowd of people.
Wow. That changes everything. It gives you permission to prioritize your safety over being polite.
Exactly. But what if someone does approach your car and you feel threatened?
Oh, my then.
Stay inside. Doors locked. And lay on the horn.
The horn.
We think of the horn as a polite, hey, the light's green. But it's your lightest weapon. It attracts attention. It destroys the silence and isolation a criminal needs.
Make a scene.
A massive scene. And call 911 immediately. But you do not open that door.
It's intense, but having that plan is better than freezing. The source also talks about parking psychology.
Yeah, find a well-lit spot near an entrance. And the most critical part is returning to your car. Have your keys in your hand before you get there. Don't be digging in your purse, head down, distracted.
And there's a specific check to do.
The 2-second check. Before you get in, quick glance in the back seat and under the car. It takes 2 seconds and ensures no one is hiding there.
And finally, the source says to trust your instincts.
Yes. If a place feels wrong, if a person makes the hair on your neck stand up, do not ignore that feeling. It's data.
We tend to dismiss that, call it being silly.
But it's your brain processing danger signals faster than you can consciously think. Listen to it. If it feels wrong, it is wrong.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground here. We've gone from the mechanical, checking fluids, to the biological, managing fatigue, and then to the tactical, locking doors and knowing what to do in a crisis.
It's a complete system, machine, human, and environment.
And for me, the big takeaway is that this isn't about being scared. It's not about driving in fear at all. It's the opposite.
That's the whole point. That's the why behind all of it. Why check your tires? Why carry a map? It's about liberation. When you know you have a plan for what could go wrong, you aren't driving with anxiety. You're driving with authority.
Driving with authority. I love that. You're the captain of your own trip.
And here's a final thought I want to leave you with. We usually think of safety as a reaction. We put on a Band-Aid after we get cut. This source teaches us that true safety is proactive. It's all in the planning.
The work you do before you even turn the key.
Exactly. So just think about this. If you were to implement just one of these things on your next trip, maybe it's just committing to that 2-hour rest rule or finally buying that paper map, how much lighter would that drive feel? How much more liberating would it be knowing you're ready for whatever comes?
That's a great question. I know my next road trip, I'll be watching for that 100-mile mark, and I'm definitely stopping to get a flashlight with fresh batteries. Thank you so much for walking us through this, and thanks to everyone listening for joining us on this deep dive.
Safe travels, everyone.
Stay safe out there.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.